League number 2. Let's give this deck a shot. Again. I'm gonna keep my eyes open this time, so that way I don't just skip through giving my Thalia protection. Planes, go. Oh. Suspend Ancestral Vision. That's what we're doing. I think I'm still going to jam Stoneforge Mystic even though we drew the Smuggler's Copter. Smuggler's Copter on turn 2 is quite good, but I think having the potential to get down a Batter Skull is a little more threatening for them, so they kind of have to deal with it urgently. Yep, bolt the guy. Is this a Teamer, maybe? Yeah, it looks like maybe we're seeing an Uro this turn. Uro. Flicker Wisp is pretty good against Uro. I think we'll ditch the second copy of Leonin Arbiter. It could become relevant here at some point, but I don't think it quite is just yet. It looks like our opponent is somewhat aggressively looking for a land. They Uro'd last turn and they put into play a Mystic Sanctuary, which is generally a land that you want to play later rather than sooner. Drawing Ghost Quarter there is quite good for us. So we'll go ahead and play out the Stoneforge Mystic. Yep. Finally got punished by our own combo, but I don't think it's gonna matter too much this game. Like we're kind of just doing our thing. And second Ghost Quarter is absurd, so I'm just gonna ditch the Flicker Wisp here, I think. Yeah. Obviously, Flicker Wisp is quite good against exactly Uro, but if they don't play Uro, then it doesn't really do much here. I do believe the next turn, yeah, this next turn is the turn that they get to do their vision thing. Mm-hmm. Go up to 8 cards in hand. Are they just dead? So we use this to put the Sword of Fire and Ice into play. We crew the copter. We equip the Sword of Fire and Ice to the copter, attack for 5, shock them for 2. I think that's correct. This on the battlefield. Crew here. I don't think it matters, but we'll crew there just in case there's something I'm like triple gut shot. Though I suppose they would not. Well, no, yeah, they had enough life to cast triple gut shot. Okay, so we're playing against a hard control deck. It looks like they've got Dreadhorde Arcanist sort of as a way to generate some value. So maybe Rest in Peace is fine. Having pro-red creatures is probably also fine. The Magistrate is fine. This shuts off their Ancestral Visions as well as the 2-mana creature that we saw. So we don't really want paths against a mostly control deck. Something like this. Smuggler's Copter is good against like Red Sweepers, Anger of the Gods, things like that. And I'll board down on like some number of Givers. Giver is good, but you really don't want to draw 2 of it. Except to give the first one protection. Ancestral Vision. Draw our Magistrate. We could get him. Ether Vial is a really good start here with all these 2-drops in our hand. 2-drops and 3-drops, the Flicker Wisps. It's like maybe, okay, a Braid. I was gonna say it was the 2-mana creature. I think I want to play this because it forces them to, like, if the turn 3, they would ideally like to play Uro if they have it. And if they have Uro into fetch land for Lightning Bolt, that's like worst case scenario for me. Otherwise, they have to refrain from playing the Uro and just immediately kill the Stoneforge Mystic. Clothis. It's not an Uro. I'm gonna play out a Vial, and then just plan to put the Batter Skull in play with the Stoneforge Mystic. It looks like mostly a tap-out control deck, but they probably are playing some number of cryptic commands, things of that nature. Opt. Dreadhorde Arcanist. Suspend second Ancestral Visions. We'll put the Batter Skull into play. Yes. I'm gonna field their Steam Vents here. Just to take them off of double red and double blue. Obviously, if they have a Lightning Bolt here, it's a little awkward because now they can bolt the Thalia, but taxing their Ancestral Visions here is primarily what I wanted to do. And they can't exactly attack freely with the Dreadhorde Arcanist. They could attack and it draws them 3 cards, which is, you know, good for them obviously, but they lose their Dreadhorde Arcanist and then they have to spend the 1 mana to cast it because of the Thalia in play. Nothing. Okay, attack for 1. Probably flashback the Visions. Not casting it. I mean, I'm not blocking. There's no reason for me to. Yes, I'd like to put a counter here. Sort of Feast and Famine. Well, that card's pretty good. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just going to attack with both. There's no reason not to attack with the Thalia, I think, at this point. When this trigger goes on the stack, we are going to float 1 mana. And then let it untap all of our lands. And then I'm gonna crack Sunbaked Canyon. Gidgeon? Well, now I'm a little upset that I've done it in this order, because playing Gidgeon would be pretty good this turn. Playing Gidgeon would be pretty good. And I think now that I've drawn Gidgeon, I'm just going to play a Flicker Wisp and flicker. I don't think it matters. I guess I could flicker the Stoneforge Mystic and just go grab Sword of Fire and Ice. Yeah, I probably should have done that, but. Eat my Sunbaked Canyon. Make a green mana. It's like they're just recasting Uro, which is fine. Sort of Feast and Famine and Flicker Wisp are just gonna go straight through Uro. They're dead if they play Uro. So, oh well, I mean, I say they're dead if they play Uro. They're dead. They're probably dead if they don't play Uro, but they like based on what is currently on the board and in play, just playing Uro does not save them. I'm just gonna flicker the Stoneforge Mystic. And then just attack with my 2 creatures that they can't currently beat. Oh yeah, I don't know why I was thinking, yeah, okay, they can't block here, but they can definitely block here. Huh, maybe we should have moved that. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us. Anger of the gods. The gods are angry. I mean this kills this, but it leaves this in play. So I'm okay with this. I'm just gonna Vial in this Flicker Wisp and flicker this out of play. This one. It is going to come back into play, and they're going to gain 3 life, put a land into play, but it does still die, so we don't have to deal with it per se anymore. They are dead on the board if we draw a land. If we don't, we just get to play Gideon. Actually, they're dead to the Gideon, aren't they? Because we just emblem it and these guys get +1/+1. Yeah. Just like we're dead barring like Spell Pierce or Force of Negation. So I'm going to err on the side of getting this Force of Negation. No. Let's equip here. I don't think it matters. Now that I think about it. I mean, like, maybe Vapor Snag. Okay, we won. Actually, I'll be back momentarily. I'm gonna go ahead and go use the restroom real quick, and then I will be right back. So. Okay. I have returned. Round 2. Alrighty. This hand seems reasonable enough. We've got a potential turn 1 Path to Exile if we absolutely need it. If it's against, like, Burn, for example. We might want a Path on turn 1. And then we have a turn 2 Leon and Arbiter. Gilded Goose is not something we'll be pathing. We will be saving this. Ooh. But we drew a turn 1 play. Which is nice. Looks like maybe an Uro. Uro. You may. You may. I will allow it. Maybe grabbing a Snowland, playing an Astrolabe, or just playing a second Goose. Abundant Growth. They are playing Orion, so that's a card that makes sense. Probably just gonna go Plains Leonin Arbiter. And then pass. Next turn we can potentially Field of Ruin one of their lands. But they did not tap out, so I definitely don't want to blow up a land of theirs to give them a land and then, you know, not give ourselves a land. I'm gonna play out Thalia and attack for 2. Ooh, Cryptic Command. I guess we should have assumed that there was a Cryptic there. Yep, that's fine. Attack for 2. Nile Spellbomb. Okay. Not entirely sure what the opponent is doing. Maybe they can't figure out how to ignore the Leonin Arbiter's ability. I think they're struggling trying to figure out how to ignore the Leonor. I mean, you just click on it. That's, I mean, like, it's, I know it's templated very poorly on Magic Online, but all you have to do is just click on it. Oh, okay. Playing an Engineered Explosives. I think I'm okay with that because what I can do, so they can't fetch here in response and crack this. So I'm going to go ahead and vial out a Charming Prince, scry 2, and then I'll use I'll use the vial on 3 to play Flicker Wisp and then flicker this out. And it's gonna return with 0 counters. Yes. Scry 2. I definitely don't think I want 2 Giver of Runes. I don't even think I really want 1. Really want like a Stoneforge Mystic here. So here, I think the line is Vial on out the Flicker Wisp. Flicker out the Engineered Explosives. How'd the games versus E-Tron go? We actually ended up losing against E-Tron. It ended up being a pretty long game, and they were able to assemble Ugin, the 6-mana Ugin plus Endbringer, and I just couldn't, like, I could beat the 6-mana Ugin if the game kept going long, but I couldn't beat the Endbringer. The Endbringer just kept saying that my Batter Skull couldn't block anymore, so it was just super awkward. Couldn't attack or couldn't block because they had it untaps every turn, so was definitely awkward. They also had a Sky Sovereign in their sideboard, which they found with Karn, the Great Creator, which is not something that's super common. It's not like unheard of. People do that pretty frequently, but it's, you know, not super common, so it wasn't on my radar to be thinking of that card. I think it's more common to see Sky Sovereign in the Pioneer format than it is to see Sky Sovereign in the Modern format. But it was definitely helpful for him there. Sky Sovereign is a it's the boat. It's the big boat card from Kaladesh. It's essentially a 5-mana artifact. So they put it in their sideboard. They can find it with Karn, and when it enters the battlefield or when it attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature. So they were able to continuously eat my board away. It's also a flyer. Yeah, he's a vehicle, yeah. I think I'm going to go ahead and play out Giver of Runes. I don't think it's, you know, they don't play a ton of removal spells. The removal spells usually come in the form of like something like this, Engineered Explosives. But I think I just want to sort of put as much pressure into play as possible. And if they do have like a Galvanic Blast or something of the sort, then this helps against that specifically. Ideally they like tap out for like an Uro here, and then we just get to path it, and they're dead on the backswing. The opponent is, it looks to be playing like the blue-green Urza, Yorion style deck, so they're playing an 80 card deck so that they can play Yorion as their companion. But the deck is mostly centered around like artifacts and Urza, Emry, Uro, like all of these synergies. Emry puts cards in the graveyard, which you can then recast with Emry. And then you can also use it to flashback Uro, or escape Uro rather. And then Urza just sort of ties everything together with all these artifacts and stuff. You make a lot of mana with Urza. They generally don't play the combo of Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek. But they generally play, you know, all these artifact synergies with Urza and Uro. So that's why people often refer to it as Uroza, or I think that's how they say it, Uroza. We'll leave this one on 3, and I'm going to take this one up to 1. The opponent is dead to the board. Maybe I should just path them and see if they see that. This one on 3, and then this one up to 1. TOMIK is okay, but not great in this spot. Obviously, they're just dead, so it doesn't really matter what we draw there. Okay, so Uroza. You know, I don't really know. I haven't played the matchup a ton, so I don't know if it's like good or bad for us. That was pretty convincing, you know, like we obviously, so they're trying to land a lot of 4 mana cards, and you know, win off the synergies of their artifacts. If they're able to stick an engineered explosives and blow up part of our board, then it can be quite bad for us. But I was able to, they put an engineered explosives on the battlefield and they didn't have the mana to fetch because Leonin Arbiter was in play. So I was able to cast Flicker Wisp, exile the engineered explosives with 2 charge counters on it, and then it comes back to the battlefield with 0 charge counters on it. So if they ever blow it up, it doesn't blow anything up. So if we can sort of like weave our way through the game that way, then we can definitely win. But I wouldn't say that it's a great matchup for us. Uro is a problem card. We don't have anything in our deck that's bigger than Uro. We just have to give it we have to give our creatures protection in order to get through Uro, or fly over the top of him. And even flying over the top of Uro isn't always the answer because he just gains 3 life every turn. So I think I want the Gideons. Those seem quite good in this matchup. Thalia's absurd. Stoneforge Mystic is great. Leonin Arbiter was fine there. Charming Prince is fine. TOMIK doesn't really do anything in this matchup. We'll take out the TOMIKs. And then Giver of Runes also doesn't really do anything in this matchup. They're not playing any targeted removal spells. They're only playing the sweepers, as far as I know. Rest in Peace is probably quite good because Rest in Peace exiles not only Uro, but it also exiles all of the cards that Emery wants to recast. And then the only other considerations that I can think of are like Dranith Magistrate is fine against Uro, and Emery, and then Disenchants are fine against some of their enchantments and artifacts and things of that nature. But generally speaking, their artifacts and enchantments that they play, I mean, they don't really play enchantments, but their artifacts that they play are kind of like meaningless cards. They really don't do anything. I think I'm going to take out the Mirren Crusader and we'll put in Dranith Magistrate. We'll try this. I could be convinced that this is not correct, but yeah, we'll run it like this. And see how it goes. This hand's not bad. It's not great though. I'm gonna keep this, but it's like a turn 1 goose. Leonin Arbiter was a pretty good draw there. Arkham's Astrolabe. I'm going to turn off auto yields here, just in case they play an Emery. If they do play an Emery, that's like the one card that I think I might path here. They did not. So I'm going to play Stoneforge Mystic here on 2. Leonin Arbiter doesn't really... So this is part of the Nambo of this deck. Leonin Arbiter and Stoneforge Mystic don't really play well together because Leonin Arbiter says you can't search and Stoneforge Mystic says search your deck for something. So they don't play super nice together, so you do have to play them in the correct order to get it to get them to work well together. So Stoneforge Mystic first, Leonin Arbiter second. That doesn't always work out the way you want it to. Like for example, if our hand was just Leonin Arbiter and we didn't have a Stoneforge Mystic in our hand, then we would obviously play the Leonin Arbiter. But then if we draw a Stoneforge Mystic after that, then casting it is kind of awkward. But doing it this way is fine because next turn we can play Leonin Arbiter and Ghost Quarter them, and then they will not get to search. Fatal Push my Stoneforge is fine. Emery is also fine. So here, I'm gonna go ahead and play out Leonin Arbiter. Are they spellbombing me? I mean, yeah, like by all means. I'm gonna go ahead and Ghost Quarter their green source. Abrupt Decay the Leonin Arbiter. So a little awkward now that we are going to path the Emery, but we really don't, we just can't let them recast the Nihil Spellbomb Engineered Explosives from the graveyard. So we don't really have an option here but to path it. Ideally, we would have gotten to untap with the Leonin Arbiter and then path it while that was in play. We're gonna go with Sword of Fire and Ice, I think. Sword of Fire and Ice just lets us take this off the table if it hits. Putting Abrupt Decay on top. And they have a way to draw a card. But thankfully, this doesn't happen until our turn, which means that this gets to untap and not be summoning sick. So if they want to draw their card and then Abrupt Decay this guy, the Batterskull at least gets to hit the battlefield. Gonna play this out. I'm I'm not gonna make the mistake of fielding first. If they want to move first on their Abrupt Decay, by all means. But now I can field freely on the Watery Grave, because this has Summoning Sickness. And still, if they want to Abrupt Decay this, we can just put the Batter Skull into play. And then Abrupt Decay eating my Stoneforge Mystic is pretty A-okay with me. And then now we're going to start attacking with the Sword of Fire and Ice on the Germ. Playing either one of these threats would also be fine here, but I think getting this going as soon as possible is better. If they want to, they likely are going to block. Otherwise, this just gets to eat a goose anyways. I'll be honest, I don't really know why they're not picking up Orion at this point. If they picked up Orion, they'd be in a much better spot. They'd have a card that they can actually cast from their hand. Yeah, now they've realized that they have a companion. Now that being said, Orion's still not like game breaking here or anything. It does draw them a card off the Arkham's Astrolabe, but it's a blue and white creature, obviously, so the Sword of Fire and Ice just lets us walk straight through it. So the question here becomes, do we Flicker Wisp the goose out of the way to get in with the Germ? And I don't think so. I'm gonna sack the Sunbait Canyon to draw a card real quick. Ooh, that's a good one. So let's attack first. So Orion is a companion, which is one of the new mechanics in Magic. Essentially, he starts... Oh, did they draw an Abrupt Decay? Oh, they drew an Abrupt Decay. It's a little annoying, but Gidgeon here is going to help us sort of bridge the gap. Make a 2/2. So Orion's one of the companions now, which is one of the new mechanics in Magic. So essentially, he starts outside the game. If your starting deck has more than 80 cards, then you can play him as your companion. So he starts in your sideboard, and then you spend 3 mana with the new companion rule. You spend 3 mana, and then he comes into your hand. So they spent last turn, they spent 3 mana to put this into their hand. Now, when it enters the battlefield, all it does is it's just going to flicker any number of permanents that they have. Non-land permanents, to be specific. Like, if they got to flicker these, that would be absurd. But they are going to flicker probably their Gilded Goose and their Arkham's Astrolabe, and it's just going to draw them a card and make them a food. So Orion on the surface is actually not like a super impactful card, but it, at the very least, gives you something to do with your mana and is an 8th card in your starting hand that you normally wouldn't have access to. New mechanics, yay. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, the companion rule is not one of my favorite rules. I think, so originally when they released this, the way that it's worded on the actual cardboard, it says, if this card is your chosen companion, you may cast it once from outside the game. So that's how it started, is that these would be in your sideboard. You could cast them straight from your sideboard once, you know, basically once a game. But the new rule says that you have to spend 3 mana to bring them into your hand first. So there's a 3 mana tax effectively on the companions. So it helps a little bit. A little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a 5/5. If we just make another token here, they get to attack him down with the Orion. So I'm going to do this turn. You have another Abrupt Decay? Okay, Fatal Push. So I think I'm going to play Flicker Wisp out here and then just flicker the Batter Skull. This gives us our Germ back. But yeah, as far as the companion mechanic goes, it's not my favorite inclusion in Magic, just because when it first came out and everybody had figured out that playing with an 8th card, essentially in your starting hand, that starts out in your sideboard, was as free as it could possibly be. So there was no reason not to be doing it. So everybody had to be building their decks around having an 8th card. Orion was a very good one. Okay, well, they attempted to put Abrupt Decay on top of their deck, and then they conceded, so I guess they figured out that they weren't going to be able to draw it any this turn or the next turn. Or, well, they were going to draw it the next turn, but this turn they weren't going to be able to stop the 3 attackers. But yeah, it's not my favorite mechanic. They've had some silly cards come out in the past few years, and I think if they don't tone down the power level, people are going to become a little bit upset with Standard and Pioneer and things like that. We're already seeing it to some degree with like Legacy and Vintage. I think the power level of Vintage and Legacy at this point are to a point where even hardcore Legacy players are not super happy with the format. You know, just like Teferi, the 3 mana Teferi, 3 mana Oko is real silly. Luris is like another companion example that's really silly. Luris was extremely good in Vintage when it was legal. It wasn't legal for very long. It was legal for a very short amount of time before they realized that Luris was a little silly. I think they banned Luris, right? In Vintage, like it was actually banned. Yeah, Luris is banned. Hardcore Legacy, that's me. Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of Legacy myself, but at this current juncture, it's not my favorite format. I think that Oko being a predominant feature of the format is not something I'm a fan of. And the decks that I enjoyed playing previously are not as viable as they used to be. Like, for example, I like to play a lot of control decks, not necessarily the blue-white ones, you know, Grixis, 4-color, that kind of thing. People are playing Hogak a lot, which I'm not a big fan of. Hogak is like pretty difficult to beat if you're not playing Terminus or Swords of Plowshares. And then, you know, it's probably just like the typical legacy metagame on top of that. You know, people are playing some amount of control decks, some amount of blue-white control, so on and so forth. I haven't played Legacy in a little while because of that. Okay, turn 3 Uro. Yeah, Hogak definitely bent me out of shape too. I'm not a fan of that card. I enjoyed playing Grixis Control for a long time in Legacy, and like genuinely the only way that I figured out how to beat the Hogak deck was just playing 4 Leyline of the Voids in the sideboard, and I absolutely cannot stand Leyline of the Void as a card. Like, it's just the most invaluable card you can possibly be playing at any point. I'm just gonna pass here and like put the Thalia into play. Actually, let's put the Thalia into play now, just so it taxes anything they want to do. Yes. Not to mention the fact that they put Ren and 6 in Legacy for a little while. That was also extremely. This is actually not a Spotify station. This is just a. Well, I'm using Google Play Music. I use their stuff, but it is on Spotify too. It's just some royalty-free music. It's called. Let me pull it up for you. Stream Beats. That's what it's called. It's gonna put me to sleep. Yeah, I know. It's pretty chill music, so. Gain control of target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1. Yeah, that's fine. Like, if you want to take my Vial. Not a big deal. Attacker for 1. So yeah, in addition to you know, the Oko and Hogak and stuff, like I was saying, Ren and 6 is also a big problem that I was not a fan of in Legacy. Obviously, they banned it. You know, they figured out that that was not something they wanted in the format. So, you know, I'm glad they figured that out. But for the time frame that it was legal, I was pretty fed up with the format, but I was still into it. Like, I was still committed to playing the format. So when I figured out that Wrenn and 6 was definitely the best thing to be doing, I went ahead and bought a couple copies. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, exactly. Wasteland you, pick up my Wasteland. Wasteland you. Good luck beating me, because I have a Delver in play. Yeah, right? Like, that was a tough deck to beat. And then, like, in addition, like, Thalia and, like, you know, other white weenie creatures. Like, you know, like, Death and Taxes was one of the decks that I had a good matchup against with Grixis control. And it just fell out of the format almost entirely because of the existence of Wrenn and 6. Like, Thalia just got eaten by Wrenn and 6, so on and so forth, right? Untapping 2 islands. I'm gonna go ahead and crack this. Sure. Go ahead and attack the Teferi. So to be clear, this is one of the decks that we were anticipating seeing in these leagues. Oh, activate Vial. All right, put an arrow into play. That's fine. That's fine. It's reasonable. This is one of the decks that I was anticipating seeing. It's called Bant Snow. Generally, they try and buy time with Ice Fang Quaddle. And Uro, and then their top end is like Teferi, the Teferi Planeswalkers. I do think that Wrenn and 6 is perfectly fine in a format such as Modern. I actually even think that Wrenn and 6 would probably be fine in Standard. Like, it doesn't really do much of anything in Standard. What's Uro do? Uro's another new card. Effectively, he's just a growth spiral, or explore even. You just draw a card, gain 3 life, and you put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. He dies whenever you play him the first time for 3 mana, but then he's got this clause down at the bottom that's called Escape. You exile 5 cards from your graveyard, and then you recast him from the graveyard. And when he hits the battlefield from the graveyard, he sticks around. And then he does that every time he attacks. So pretty good card. Essentially just a 3 mana ramp spell that gains you a little bit of life. And then later in the game, he's just a 4 mana threat that just takes over the game. He draws you cards and gains you life and puts lands into play. He does everything. Just gonna go ahead and Field of Ruin one of their white sources. Maybe I should do a green source actually, but probably not the end of the world. Okay. You got it, boss. This could very easily be a game that we're going to lose. The Teferi just constantly being able to uptick here is gaining them a lot of traction. I'm a little surprised to not see them bounce Mystic Sanctuary. It's possible they already have a fetch land in their hand. Yeah, they already have a fetch land, so they're going to grab another Mystic Sanctuary. This card puts an instant or sorcery on top of their deck, so they're going to put this Cryptic Command back on top, and then the Cryptic Command they can draw with the Teferi. And then they get this loop where Cryptic Command bounces Mystic Sanctuary back to their hand, and they tap all of my creatures. And then the Cryptic Command goes back to the graveyard, and then we loop. We play the Mystic Sanctuary from our hand. Mystic Sanctuary puts the Cryptic Command back on top. Its fairy draws it, and then they tap my creatures, pick up the Mystic Sanctuary. It's a whole loop where they essentially just tap my creatures down every turn and re-pick up this land. They don't get to develop their mana whenever they do this, but it actually doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think this matters, but I mean, like, I'm not going to give them a Giver of Runes. I don't think we're pathing anything else, really. Generally, they don't really get to develop their mana by doing this, and unless they have an engine in play that actually draws them cards, the Cryptic Command picking this up and being able to get put back on top doesn't actually do anything. They have to have something in play that draws them a card, which can come in the form of Uro or Jace or something along the lines. And I think the Jace I will go ahead and concede to. So, cards we don't need. Path to Exile. TOMIK. Cards we do need. Gideon. Rest in Peace. Selfless Spirit. Probably the Draneth Magistrate. Stops Uro. But does it stop anything else? I mean, it stops Snapcaster Mage, but I don't think they play Snapcaster Mage, really. I think I'll hold off on that one. I'll bring in a single Disenchant. Just to kind of hedge against some random enchantment or something that they're playing. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but they might be playing something that I'm not thinking of. Worst case scenario, we can use Disenchant to blow up an Arkham's Astrolabe to hopefully mess up their mana a little bit. I've reconsidered my options. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with the Draneth Magistrate. I think this being able to stop potential Snapcaster Mages and Uro is a little better. Yes, I'd like to play first. And yes, I'd like to keep. Got a turn 1 Giver, turn 2 Thalia, turn 3 Leon, and Arbiter. If we draw a Ghost Quarter, this hand is a little bit absurd because we get to go turn 3 Leon and Arbiter plus Ghost Quarter. You untap Field of Ruin, your land. Play out Thalia. I should probably be playing some number of Cavern of Souls in this deck. Yeah, that seemed like a pretty good 7. This was not the greatest draw, but it's fine. I think the only thing I could have asked more from that 7 was this being a Ghost Quarter. Ooh. Stoneforge Mystic. Grabbing Batter Skull. Could be in a little bit of trouble here because of the Batter Skull. We do not have any way to take a Batter Skull off the table because we didn't board in the disenchants. I decided last second that I didn't want any of those. If they want to field me, I'm like, by all means. But they are leaving up Batter Skulls, or Stoneforge's ability. Gonna go ahead and scry 2. Do we want Ghost Quarter, Second Arbiter? I think I kind of want the Ghost Quarter. I'm gonna go bottom, top, play out Selfless Spirit. And then here we have a debate on whether or not to attack. And if we attack, we sort of have to give pro black with a giver, but then they don't have to attack back. Ideally, we would have gotten to, you know, they attack back, and then we get to double give protection and eat the Batter Skull, but that seems unlikely for them to do. So I'm gonna sort of force them to do this here. Yeah, no, if they wanna put an Ice Fang Waddle in play, that's fine. They're just gonna take 2. How can you beat Batter Skull? Well, so the Giver of Runes can give us protection. So Giver of Runes is very similar to Mother Runes. We can just give it protection from black, and the Germ token is black, so we can just attack through it. Yeah, in this specific game, that's like the plan, I think. I'm gonna play out Ghost Quarter. Seems like losing the race, right? Well, so if we use one giver to get an attack through, we can use the other giver to prevent them from gaining life. We can block and then prevent them from gaining life. So with 2 givers, we can outpace them. With 1 giver, I understand what you're saying. Just gonna run it back here. Attack with the Thalia. It seems like the opponent's not doing anything because our own Batter Skull is not the greatest draw. Aether Vial doesn't really do anything either, so I'm going to hold that in my hand. Our opponent's not really doing anything because if they ever tap any more mana, then we immediately get to tap 2, Field of Ruin them, and Ghost Quarter them, so we get to destroy 2 lands. So our opponent's just sort of untapping every turn and hoping to draw mana. Yeah, Mystic Sanctuary. And we're not really drawing much of anything. I think I'm going to force them to block. Like, I guess there's not really any reason not to attack with Charming Prince. This card doesn't really do anything. Should have been attacking with this previously. I don't want to attack with the Selfless Spirit because I don't want to just trade the Selfless Spirit for the Ice Fang Quaddle, and I don't want to attack with the Leonin Arbiter because they can double block and eat the Leonin Arbiter, and this is like the best taxing effect that we have in play right now because it prevents them from making fetch land drops, and it prevents them from Field of Ruining, and it also prevents them from really spending their mana at all because as soon as they do, they get Field of Ruin plus Ghost Quartered. Fifth land. So here, now that we've gotten to this point in the game, they now have enough mana to cast Cryptic Command. What do you got? This is an EE. I think Uro. Yeah, that's fine. So let's say we attack with everything. Except for one giver. If they put the Batter Skull into play, they can block here and then block a 2-power creature with the Batter Skull, and they take 5. So it's not quite lethal. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to keep doing what I have been doing. Thalia, Charming Prince. So yeah, I'm going to let them block, and then I'm going to give my creature pro black. And they'll take 2. Actually, I forgot about my land destruction effects here. I definitely should have done that while they were tapped out. Now they have the mana to pay for Leonin Arbiter again. I'm going to block here. And then give this pro black. And And I feel like this is the best block because if they want to like kill this with like a white removal spell, they're not pointing it at the Leonid Arbiter. And I'll go grab a plains. And they don't gain any life. So here I'm going to go ahead and play my own Batter Skull. We have the mana to do so, and they don't have any counter magic up from what it looks like. So I'm just going to get this onto the table while I can. Worst case scenario, they untap and have a Supreme Verdict. But I don't really think that these lists are playing too many Supreme Verdicts, if any at all. I wonder if they're activating Field of Ruin here. Force of Negation. Sure. So if we attack with Thalia, give it pro black, they can double block with Stoneforge Mystic plus Icefang Quaddle, and we're going to lose our Thalia. If we attack with Charming Prince, give it pro black, same scenario, but we lose a Charming Prince. But maybe losing the Thalia is somehow better because we have another Thalia in our hand. But I don't know that I want to just give them like free reign this turn. Yeah, I'm just gonna pass here because I don't want to lose my Thalia when they only have 5 mana. Because if we let them untap with 5 mana, I was also afraid of them putting another equipment into play, sort of Feast and Famine. That one's not too scary. Actually, that one is kind of scary now that I think about it. For some reason, I was thinking that they weren't going to be able to put it on this flyer, but they definitely can. And get the smack on. We might lose this game. We've given them a lot of time, and I bordered out all my Path to Exiles thinking that they weren't playing anything like this, but they are apparently playing a Stoneforge Mystic package. And discard a Vial. The opponent didn't really use that mana though, which is, nice. They play like a Jace here. Oh, gross. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to do with that. I mean, we get to rebuild pretty well, which is nice. I'm gonna take them off of their green source. I mean, it's certainly possible. I bet it's a main board thing, though. You know, boarding in like 7 cards for a Stoneforge Mystic package seems a little excessive. But it definitely could be a sideboard thing. But I think it's, you know, the Stoneforge Mystic is sort of a big packet. Like, if it was just 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic, I think I'd agree with you. But it's 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic and a Batterskull and a Sword of Feast Famine, you know, so on and so forth. So, and they're probably playing a Sword of Fire and Ice as well. Most lists play 3 equipments. We are currently playing 3 equipments, so. So I think I'm going to go ahead and play Leonin Arbiter and then Field of Ruin their Hallowed Fountain and then just attack them. I don't really care about Teferi. And then this is lethal next turn. Arkham's Astrolabe. Polluted Delta doesn't find anything unless they pay for the Leonin Arbiter. Attack you. Ooh. Coatl. Coatl's just a chump blocker though, because they don't have 3 snow permanents in play. So I'm gonna go ahead and play out the Sword of Fire and Ice here. Instead of Charming Prince. Basically the best card they could potentially have at this point is another Supreme Verdict. So if they have that, then I think the best card to have in play is a Sword of Fire and Ice, rather than another creature. We could have also gotten the Aether Vial going, which is reasonable. Aether Vial plus Charming Prince is eventually like gonna be a good combination of cards to have, but we're just having trouble right now sort of finding the mana to play Aether Vial. I made a minor misplay on a prior turn. When I redeployed these threats, I played the Thalia first, whereas I should have played Aether Vial and then Thalia and then Leonin Arbiter, and I still would have had enough mana to Ghost Quarter them, so, or I wouldn't have had to have tapped the Ghost Quarter. I basically didn't use the Field of Ruin that turn, where I could have used the 1 mana to play an Aether Vial, and I'd have an Aether Vial on 2 right now, which is super relevant. Like, we could be flickering one of these guys if they went for a removal spell here. This is only game 2, so like the opponent definitely has the opportunity to still win the match, but they're running low on time. They put a Path to Exile on top. They cannot fetch. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and suit up. I guess the Leonin Arbiter. I don't know if there's a difference here. I don't know if it matters which one we suit up. And I'm gonna attack with both. Looks like maybe another Ice Fang Quaddle. Yep. They have to draw into Path to Exile. We're gonna path the Leonin Arbiter. And then do we want to spend 2 mana to find a land, or do we want to just deploy some more threats? I think the answer is deploy more threats. I'm gonna play out a Giver of Runes next turn. Oh yeah, no, never mind. We get to search anyways because he's exiling the, yeah. The question is, because, okay, so they're at 1. So I think I'm actually just gonna play the Ether Vial out here because this goes up to 1, and then on the following turn, we can sort of surprise them with a Giver of Runes. Though I am well aware that this gets to bounce this. Well, yeah, I don't actually know that that was correct now. Gosh, I don't know. Maybe, actually, you know what their best line is probably? They're probably just going to pick up the Batter Skull and then recast the Batter Skull. I don't know that I can beat that. If they do that, then I'm going to get punished for not playing the Giver this turn. Nope, they're just bouncing Thalia. Stone Froggy Dog. Not find anything. And then what do we draw? Another copy of Ether Vial. So I am just going to deploy a Thalia and then put the Sword of Fire and Ice on it. Oh, all right. Well, in that case, we're going to play out a Charming Prince and scry 2. Actually, so I'm gonna go top and top with this, the sort of Feast and Famine. The reason why is because, so on the end step, we're gonna activate Ether Vial and we're going to put the Giver of Runes into play. They're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. They cannot fetch here because they're at 1. So if they play a land from their hand, let's say they played an untapped island, they could pick up Batter Skull for 3 mana, put it back into play with the Stoneforge Mystic, then they'd have a Germ to block, and then if they have 1 more mana there, so the 6th land, I guess 7th technically. Oh, this is not a line that I had thought of. I did not think they were going to just slap that boy on there. But I think they're still dead, right? Yeah, they're dead. Unless they have Path to Exile. Yep. I think we're gonna die to our opponent suiting up the Batterskull on the Stoneforge Mystic. Man, that was a very, very close game. I'm gonna go ahead and play out the Ether Vial because they're gonna make me discard a card anyways. They were dead if they didn't have exactly Path to Exile, because we get to suit up the Fire and Ice on the Charming Prince, give it protection from white to prevent the Stoneforge Mystic from blocking, attack them for 4, the Sword of Fire and Ice shoots them. Shoots them for 2, and they were at 6. They were at 1 for the longest time. They attacked for 5, they went to 6, and then they fetched down to 5. So the fetch didn't matter there. They were at 6 exactly. 4 plus a shock for 2 is lethal. So super duper close, but it looks like our opponent is going to just barely pry themselves out of this situation. The Uro is definitely going to close the gap here. That portion of it is almost definitively going to happen. The Uro getting to come back here. We've kept them off double green for so long in the game. It like hasn't been on my radar for the most of the game, but now they have a green source here and a green source here. So they're going to make double green and then bring back Uro, and they'll gain 3 more life, draw another card, put another land into play. However, my opponent has taken their sweet time in playing this game. So if we draw even 1 card that buys just a little bit of time, then we could potentially stall this game out long enough that they lose on time. But I think it is unlikely to happen that way. That's what we went on? Man, opponent went deep on that. So we're technically still not dead. The Charming Prince gets to block the Uro. The Stoneforge Mystic gets to chump block the Stoneforge Mystic. And then beyond that, like we pretty much don't really have a way to get ourselves out of this game, but we can sort of hope that because our opponent has taken so long, that they'll just time out and they can't kill us quickly enough. But I do believe they have successfully won the game. Otherwise. Another copy of Arkham's Astrolabe. Yeah, even if we block here, we are still dead. Really close match. Obviously we had to play a third game there, but our opponent was so far behind on clock that I think we were just gonna win the match if they ran out. So it was overall an extremely close game. We got them down to 1 and held them at 1 life for I don't even know how many turns, but kind of a whatever hand, but gonna go ahead and keep it. Nothing too fancy, but hey, that's a good draw. Good draw. It looks like we might get a shot at a rematch here. Bant, Snow was the deck we lost to previously. We may have another opportunity here to beat it. Just gonna go ahead and clear the breeding pool off. Not really a ton of reason to do that, but I'm just gonna go ahead and mess with their mana a little bit if I can. Just gonna go ahead and play out the Sword of Fire and Ice. I'll go ahead and attempt to suit up. Thalia is now officially a superhero. Ba-bang! I'll play out an Aether Vial. I would not be surprised if they countered that there. Path my Giver. You got it, bud. Tag for 4. I'm gonna put Path the Exile back on top of their deck. Okay. Just gonna put the sword back on the Thalia. I know they obviously have a Path to Exile in their hand, but I'll just use my mana. Whereas otherwise I don't think I really would be. Go ahead and put the Giver into play. It's always so weird to me that people respond to Aether Vial like they think they're just gonna get got. I mean, like, you know, if it's on 2, I get it, I guess. Like, I could put in Leonin Arbiter, but like, I'm just putting in a Giver of Runes. So like, just wait until I put the Giver of Runes into play, and then like, you can think about whether or not you want to path the Giver. Okay, so on this turn, I'm gonna play out Leonin Arbiter. Actually, no, we've got an Aether Vial to put Leonin Arbiter into play. So the question is, do we suit up the Giver of Runes with the Sword of Fire and Ice and go for lethal here? And I think so. I think we're gonna give it a shot. And if our opponent wants to tap some mana to prevent this from happening, then we just get to play the Leonin Arbiter out and blow up some other lands. Conceded from the game. So I think I'm going to do the same thing that we did last time. We're just going to board out the pass and the TOMIKs. And we're going to bring in Gidgens, Selfless Spirit, Rest in Peace, and the Draneth Magistrate. Something like this here. And We didn't see any Stoneforge Mystics in game 1. Obviously, they could be on that plan as well, but, you know, ideally they're not. Even if they are, we were very close to beating the Stoneforge Mystic plan in game 2 against our other opponent, so it's not like it's the end of the world. Giver of Runes is quite good on turn 1. I'm just going to play out Field of Ruin. The land choice doesn't matter a ton. Oh, my bad. I totally meant to play Stoneforge Mystic here instead of Leon and Arbiter, but it's probably not a big deal. It just means that we aren't going to get to put a Batter Skull into play until turn 4. Or they're likely going to interact with my Giver of Runes here, and then interact with Leon and Arbiter on the following turn. And then we get to play a Stoneforge Mystic on a relatively empty board. What you got for me? Probably Ice Fang Quaddle. That's what it looks like. Yep. Is a snake. Is a slippery snake. Yeah, minor whoops. Tefree. Bouncing Giver. Yeah. This is fine. Hey. I'm going to play out Giver and Selfless Spirit here. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the Teferi off the table, or at least attempt to. Seems like the best use of my attack. Because they want to save the Teferi, they have to throw the Ice Fang Quaddle away, and this does not currently have Death Touch. So there's a little bit of upside to leaving this in play, because eventually it could have Death Touch, and they can trade it for one of my other creatures that's more relevant. Or actually trade it, I guess. Whereas right there it doesn't trade. Now they have Death Touch, because they're twinsies. We're going to go ahead and ignore Leon and Arbiter's ability and cast Stoneforge Mystic. And then we'll grab Batter Skull. And I'm going to go ahead and pass. I don't want to walk these into the Ice Fang Quaddles. Next turn, we can use the Stoneforge Mystic to put the Sword of Fire and Ice in play and then suit up a creature with the Sword of Fire and Ice. Uro. It's possible maybe I should have gotten sort of Feast and Famine for that reason. Because Feast and Famine would let us untap and then also play Rest in Peace this next turn to prevent the Uro from happening. So now I think I want to Rest in Peace, Charming Prince, flicker the Stoneforge Mystic. And that'll be that. Or maybe we just Rest in Peace plus activate Stoneforge Mystic. I think I like that better. and just put a Batter Skull into play. All right, Jace the Mind Sculptor. One of, if not my most favorite cards in Magic, has hit the table. It's on the wrong side. It needs to be on this side, but can't have everything. We're gonna put the Booter Skull into play. I think just having this not summoning sick is better than putting the Sword of Fire and Ice into play. So now what do we do? I think this is a Sword of Fire and Ice turn with the Germ. I actually have a couple lines this turn. I think actually what we're gonna do is we're gonna blow up this land. Give this protection from green or blue. It doesn't matter. We'll go with blue, I guess. And then I'm gonna attack Jace just with that. And then here on our next turn, we can activate Stoneforge and put in the Sword of Fire and Ice. I'm gonna go ahead and ignore this effect. The primary reason why I want to do that is because I understand that, you know, them pathing is a little bit scary, but they can't Supreme Verdict this turn because they can't fetch both of these lands away. So we're in fine shape there. I'm gonna just put the Sophie in play and then put the Sophie on the Germ. And I don't think there's really much my opponent can do. They can't block. I'm gonna throw this upstairs. I don't really care about these Ice Fang Quaddles because my most relevant creature has Pro Blue. So, this is a little bit of an interesting interaction. So, Leon and Arbiter specifically says you may pay 2 to ignore this effect, and then they're going to fetch both of their lands here. What we're going to do is on our opponent's draw step, we're going to blow up one of their lands. And I think I'm going to go for the Hallowed Fountain. The reason being is because they've made it very obvious what they're trying to go for. And if they want to get another land here, they have to spend 2 mana to get another land drop. So by getting these white sources, they're signaling to me that they want to play a Supreme Verdict here. Now, obviously, they can still do that. They have to spend this 2 mana to be able to search. And then once they do, they can go get a Plains and use the Plains to cast a Supreme Verdict. They don't have a second Plains. They do. If they didn't have a second Plains, then they wouldn't be able to cast Supreme Verdict here. But they do have the second Plains, so we are going to probably lose our board here. But it's not the end of the world. We do have some follow-up creatures, as well as the Batter Skull and Sword of Fire and Ice just being on the table. Thalia is like super good here. I'm gonna go ahead and play out the Flicker Wisp and flicker the Batter Skull. Unfortunately, I haven't set up commands yet for the deck, but we do have a deck list here on Stream Decker on screen, so. If you're having issues looking at the Stream Decker, I can also send you the Stream Decker link if you'd like. I don't think I want to spend my mana suiting up the Sword of Fire and Ice. If they have something to interact here, then we can spend our mana post-combat to play out some more creatures, or suit up the Sword of Fire and Ice then. But yeah, I had a presumption that they were going to do something like this. So they're going to bounce the Germ, draw a card. Which is a little bit interesting, I'll be honest with you. We get to attack for 5 here. So I'm going to do something a little bit cute. We are going to play out a Charming Prince and flicker the Flicker Wisp. And then we're going to play out an Ether Vial. Yeah. And then when the Flicker Wisp comes back into play, we're going to use the Flicker Wisp to then flicker the Charming Prince. And then that's not going to come back until my opponent's next end step. And when it comes back, then we can flicker the Flicker Wisp again and sort of do this chain of threats that are only present at the end step. Make 3 soldiers. I think here I'm going to go ahead and scry 2 instead of flickering the Flicker Wisp. We have a second Charming Prince to flicker the Flicker Wisp on this next turn. Canyon, Arbiter, both on bottom. I don't want the Arbiter here. We don't have any way to blow up lands, so... Yes, we would like to put a counter on Ether Vial, and Stoneforge Mystic is a okay draw. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna lead on Stoneforge Mystic. Go grab sort of Feast and Famine. And then we will attack with these creatures. Obviously, they can triple block the Thalia and they can double block the Charming Prince if they wanted to. Like, they can do some iteration of blocks here, but I think any blocks that they make, I'm like pretty okay with. I don't really mind them killing my creatures. As long as we keep some amount of board presence here. Yeah, like triple blocking here is pretty fine. They're gonna take 5. I'm gonna play out a Charming Prince. Exile the Flicker Wisp. Honestly, I wish that I could have Vialed in the Charming Prince's turn. If this was on 2, would be in absolutely amazing shape. They're gonna path the Charming Prince, or the Flicker Wisp rather. Which is fine. If we had a Vial on 2, we could activate Vial on our instep, flicker the Flicker Wisp, which then doesn't come back until their instep. Then the Flicker Wisp comes back into play, and we can flicker the Batter Skull, which comes back on our instep. Basically, we just want to put the Batter Skull back into play at an ideal time. I guess that wouldn't quite work out because... Yeah, no, this worked out the way we wanted it to. Yeah, if we got the flicker there, we would have been fine. But obviously, them having the path is a little bit unfortunate. Arkham's Astrolabe. Five-mana Teferi could definitely pull our opponent out of the spot that they are currently in. This card turns the game around quite quickly, so let's draw something before they do anything else. We still have a pretty reasonable board presence, don't get me wrong, so there is that. Well, Gidgeon is pretty good. The question is, would we rather spend our mana this turn just picking up the Batter Skull and putting it back into play? Let's do this first. Let's just attack with... I think I'm going to attack with all 3 creatures. No, I'm just going to attack with the Charming Princess. And we'll leave this up as an option to sort of pick up and do Batter Skull things. Yeah, we'll just attack with the Charming Princess. And we're going at them. There is no reason for us to go with the Teferi because they're both at 5. And if we hit them, then we're in better shape than just hitting the Teferi. They're going to trade off a Charming Prince for an Ice Fang Quaddle. So fingers crossed that this resolves. They could have a force of negation here, which obviously would be bad, but it did resolve, so we're gonna get to start pumping out some tokens. And then do we want to put the Sword of Feast and Famine into play, or do we want to just suit up the Sword of Fire and Ice on like a something? I think we'll try and put the Sword of Feast and Famine into play. I could go either way on that one. I just want to use my mana this turn. Mostly. Uro. Uro is okay. It doesn't really do much of anything here at this juncture because we have the Rest in Peace to play, which is pretty great. I can't remember. Is this game 3? This might be game 3. I don't remember, honestly. I know we're obviously post-board, but I don't remember if this is game 1 or game 2. Or I'm sorry, game 2 or game 3. Playing out in Arkham's Astrolabe, draw a card. These things are all fine. Untap some lands. I'm gonna put the Sword of Feast and Famine into play. And we've already drawn both of our Charming Princes, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this on 3. Because flickering in a Flicker Wisp is better than any other creature we could potentially flicker in, I suppose. So I'm gonna go ahead and suit up some creatures. Put this on here. And we're gonna put this on here. Yeah. Last match was the same deck, so I don't remember exactly what game we're in. I'm just gonna send everything at them. And then we still have enough mana to pick up the Batterskull. Snapcaster Mage as a blocker. Likely, yeah, this was my guess. And they're gonna let sort of Feast and Famine hit them. Or they're going to path it, I guess. Is the other option. Okay. Play a Batterskull. Make a living weapon. I'm gonna go ahead and cycle this. Make another 2/2. And pass the turn. Mm-hmm. Looks like they might be digging for another copy of Supreme Verdict. Always no, always yield. At this point, I don't want to move this from 3. Let's just attack first. See what we get in with. Looks like a cryptic command, tap your team. Make a 2/2. Cycle the Sunbaked Canyon. Play out a Thalia. It's like a potential counterspell. Nope, they're just choosing to draw 2. I don't think this matters a ton, but I'm just gonna move one of my swords over. We're through 2 copies of Cryptic Command and 1 Supreme Verdict. So we're trying to dodge Supreme Verdict, obviously. Cryptic Command buys them a lot of time. Gonna go ahead and cycle Silent Clearing. Found another Thalia. And then we'll go ahead and attempt the attack again. Supreme Verdict, sure. And they get an emblem. And they're going to draw a card. They're likely going to exile our Gideon. And then our Rest in Peace. Go ahead and play the Batter Skull. I understand that they can definitely exile it. This is going to be a game where we're just going to try and win on them decking. They've drawn so many cards that the only win conditions that they really have left are, you know, like Uro and the Snapcaster Mages. And I'm obviously not super scared of the Snapcaster Mages. These guys only clock for 2 per turn. Yes, we would like to put one there. Cycle this. Going to cast Thalia. Move Sword of Fire and Ice. Because why not? They are now at 2. They do not have any forests or islands left to go get, so I don't know why they would crack a second Misty Rainforest, but to each their own. Path. My Thalia is fine. Yep, they're gonna start going after my equipments. Man, yeah, the 6 life there is pretty relevant. Gonna go ahead and put this giver into play. They have a path for it. You go ahead and play out a 30 through Vial. Like, it doesn't really matter too much anymore. They basically have to kill us before drawing their 8th card. So currently we're on a 10-turn clock. The Uro changes that pretty drastically, actually. But do they kill us before the Uro? Huh. So they're going to get to draw a card, gain some life, and then exile another permanent. They're probably going to exile the Aether Vial on 2. We're going to go ahead and Vial in this Leonin Arbiter. Okay, second to Fairy. Oh, they just get to keep tucking. I think at this point we don't have any way to win because the second Teferi lets them tuck itself, and they get to continue to do that infinitely. So I'm gonna take one more draw step and then probably concede. But Flicker Wisp is definitely the best draw we could have had. Flicker Wisp lets us flicker the Uro, and then it's not going to come back into play. It does force them to draw a card, and then they get to exile the Flicker Wisp, but it buys us a lot of time. And then the Teferi is like there. Yeah, why does Teferi tuck itself? That's so awkward. We're gonna do this. I don't know if this gets us anywhere, but we'll see. I don't know what we could draw at this point, but like we basically have, you know, a limited number of draw steps before. The thing is that like every time we draw a threat, they have to then answer that threat with the exile, so they don't get to keep eating our board. But how does this pan out? Because like the Teferi keeps casting itself and tucking itself, and then they just draw the Teferi like infinitely, but they don't have any way to interact based on what I'm seeing. They probably do have like something in their hand that does something. Aether Vial's not what I wanted. 4th Aether Vial, no less. Yep. We have a single Gideon. We'll try the Stoneforge Mystic. It doesn't find anything, I don't think. We're all out of equipment, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So what we have left is like a Gideon and 2 Flicker Wisps. I should have vialed that into play. Now they just get to exile this with the draw step. They officially have no cards left in their deck. So how do we beat this? That's it, right? I think we did it. Because they have to draw, and now they go to the draw step. We did it! That was a very, very close game. I did not see the line for the longest time on how we were going to win that. And then we did. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. Sorry, I had to take a phone call real quick, but I have returned to beat the Mono Red Menace. One Bernie boy. I'm gonna go play a Thalia here. This is one matchup where our Sunbaked Canyon, being a pain land and not just a plains, is definitely gonna punish us. That's a Booter Skull. Just gonna play out the Leonin Arbiter, and I'll pass. If they want to attack with this, they'll need to kill both of my creatures, which they may have the mana and the spells to do so. Whew. Whew. Bedlam Reveler. Just gonna path this and say go. Maybe I should have attacked with Leon and Arbiter there. Probably. I need to kill them at some point. Lava Dart. That's just rude. That's just rude, my dude. No attack. Oh, I should have, yeah, I tapped incorrectly there. Should have tapped that. I should have cast this off of Double Field of Ruin instead of Field of Ruin Plains. We'd have enough, we'd have mana up to cast Path to Exile. Still have the mana up, but it's going to cost us the life to do so. Whale. If they had a removal spell, I think they would be attacking. So I'm going to go on the air that they don't have a removal spell. And we're going to get in with the Smuggler's Copter. And if we get to... yeah, we're going to ditch this Ether Vial. If we get to draw a land, then we get to play our Batter Skull out of our hand. Manamorphose. Lava Spike you. Light up the stage. Bolt Soulscar Mage. Bolt your Germ. Oh, yeah, we're dead. They have a Lava Spike. They have a, yeah, Lava Dart in the graveyard. We died. Definitely should have left up Path to Exile there in hindsight, but, you know. I still think this is a pretty good matchup for us in general. Want these, and I believe that is it. We'll just keep in the Sword of Feast and Famine, because sometimes it can help out a little bit. Sure, keep this. boy. That one. That one. I would like to cast my card that you probably can't beat. Monastery Swiftspear. Should always yield to that. Got a Lava Spike. Turn off auto yields. Yes. Always yield to this. Always yield to this. And then yield. Block. Play out a Stoneforge Mystic. Just go grab, I think, Shadow Spear. Just gonna play that out and try and slap that on that boy. And get some lifelink going. Lava Spike me. Yes. Always yes. Always yield. Light up the stage plus mountain. So they're probably going to go mountain and then cast light up the stage. Lava Dart. Lava Dart your Stoneforge Mystic. And then sack the Lava Dart. Yeah. Yeah, Core Firewalker's pretty good against these prowess creatures. It just like gets to infinitely block. We are taking 5, we're going to 11, but Core Firewalker has done an exceptional job of just preventing tons and tons of damage. The question is, do I want to spend 3 mana playing a Flicker Wisp? And sort of ensuring that we use our mana this turn, or do I want to simply just suit this up, give it +1/+1 attack for 3, gain 3, but then my opponent has light up stage plus creatures. I think I'm going to go ahead and use my mana and play out a Flicker Wisp. I guess I should have attacked for 2. There's not really much reason not to do that. I'm gonna go just Flicker a Plains. Make them think I have a Path to Exile. Looks like a main phase light up the stage, possibly. Opponent concedes. Okay. Well, hopefully we just get to do that again. Just give me another Core Firewalker. They started with 7 cards. We'll go ahead and keep this. It's not the greatest hand because it's got 2 pain lands in it. Hey, that's a good draw. I mean, it's kind of a good draw. We didn't really want a 5th land, but we also didn't want to take a whole bunch of damage from our white sources. Yeah. I assumed they were going to be throwing a bolt at the giver. Okay. Well, I am 1000% just playing out Athalia here. and if they want to attack, I'm again 1000% blocking. And then this is going to become a very easy game very quickly. They own an Arbiter, Ghost Quarter that one. Your turn. So like at this point, it doesn't look like they're a Luris deck because they're playing, oh they're not, they're playing Bedlam Reveler, but in any case, the only spells that they would be able to play if they were a Luris deck is the Mishra's Baubles off of 1 land. But I'm just gonna go ahead and play out attack for 2 with just the Leon and Arbiter. Let's see what they do. Then we're gonna play out an Ether Vial. Still can't attack. So the question here is, do we ignore the Leon and Arbiter's ability and take 2 life to then cast a Stoneforge Mystic and go find something like Shadow Spear? I think that definitely closes the door the quickest, so I'm gonna go ahead and go for that line. We're gonna go grab Shadow Spear and then just attack with the Leon and Arbiter again. Obviously, if they find a land at some point, then they're going to be able to start doing things past the Thalia, but I think Shadow Spear, Batter Skull in our hand gives us the best options. The Stoneforge Mystic obviously being in play, just gets to put the Batter Skull in play, so pretty good shape there. We went 4-1 with Death and Taxes. We went 3-2 in our previous league. I like this deck. I do. I think it obviously has a little bit of a nombo between Stoneforge Mystic, Leon, and Arbiter, but it's playing a lot of very neat and useful cards, most of which are 2-for-1s. I say most of which, but like it's really just Stoneforge Mystic. It's just your only 2-for-1. But you can interact at instant speed with Charming Prince and Flicker Wisp on the Ether Vials, which can kind of give you pseudo 2-for-1s. You can draw more cards with Stoneforge Mystic, things like that. Even though the deck doesn't play Recruiter of the Guard like the Legacy version does, you still get a lot of good Flicker targets with Flicker Wisp and Charming Prince. I think moving forward, what would I change about this deck? The Field of Ruins were always a little bit awkward, so I don't know that those are 100% necessary. But they were pretty good in the games when they were good. So I do think Selfless Spirit was pretty absurd in the games where we had it. So I think I'd probably increase the number of this in the sideboard if we were going to move forward with this. Smuggler's Copter didn't really do much of anything in any of the games that we played. But, you know, still seems pretty good in like a theoretical sense. So, yeah. Do I want to run this through another league? I mean, we may as well, right? We're on a pretty good little streak. May as well just give it another shot.